JMU and Georgia State advance, and let's start previewing the Huskies taking on the Ragin Cajuns in the Super Regional. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I am your host, Dave Schultz. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. All right, Sunbelt Baseball Tournament underway. JMU slips by ODU, and they move on. They will take on the number 2 seeded Southern Miss Golden Eagles. And what a few weeks it's been for JMU, which includes a sweep of the UL Ragin Cajuns. And that was part of the what is going on with the Cajuns story, right? They need to not only win this series, but they need to sweep James Madison. And, you know, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now. As great as the Cajuns have played, you know, JMU is basically right there. They got like 2 bad losses in that stretch, whereas the Cajuns won 7 out of their last 9 in the Sun Belt. JMU went from 11th. They were out of the playoffs all the way to 4th. I think they lost the last game of the series against ODU on a Sunday. That prevented them from like tying for 3rd at one point in time. But JMU has gone from 11th to 4th to 6th, and then they had to play in this play-in game, I guess, if you want to call it that way, single elimination ball game. And what a ball game it was. I mean, a 2-1 victory over ODU. ODU actually jumps on top with a run in the 3rd, 2 runs for JMU in the 4th. JMU pitching gives up all of 2 base hits. And I mean, how long was this game? Do we have the notes on this game? This game couldn't have taken very long at all. 2 hours and 26 minutes, flying by. In Montgomery. Williams gets the win. Bogotoski the save. I mean, Sam Armstrong for Old Dominion. Goodness, you know, what was his total line? I mean, you know, I guess he gave up. He got him out of there. Two runs on 6 hits and 4 1/3 innings. 1 walk and 4 strikeouts. Holobets came in and, you know, 3 2/3 of shutout baseball. But I mean, not a whole lot going on in a 2-1 ball game. Let's quickly look what happened in the 4th. They had a base hit, a sac bunt. Then they had actually a single that did not score a run, but then a double to Novak. And that's basically the ball game. Novak with a double, and that is the difference in the game for James Madison. So the Dukes continue to kind of ride that wave of, you know, taking 3 from the Cajuns. And it kind of goes back to the Friday night ball game where the Cajuns fell behind and the season's over and what's going on. And all of a sudden you look up and, you know, they're tied and then they're ahead. And I think Brock hits a home run to give them a lead and they're going to come away with a victory, except James Madison hits like a 3-run pinch hit home run in the bottom half of the 9th inning. And the Cajuns didn't have much fight in them that week. They got ahead, I think, each of the next couple of ball games, but they couldn't hold off the JMU offense at that point in time. And so give it up to the Dukes. You know, another one of those new ball clubs that, you know, James Madison had, you know, an outstanding football season, right? Kurt Cignetti got him going, you know, winning the division, regardless of not being in the Sun Belt Conference championship ball game against Troy. They hammered Coastal Carolina. Give it up to them, you know, getting to I think they got to the semifinals of the Sun Belt Conference tournament against South Alabama. And, you know, because couldn't stop the South Alabama point guard. Just so good. And now they're into the double elimination after having been, you know, towards the bottom of the conference with a month to go. And now they're going to face Southern Miss Southern Miss on Wednesday, today, let's see. We got the bracket here. What time's that going to be? I think that's mid-afternoon ball game. What did I do with the brackets? Here we go. Okay. You do have Troy and App State playing 3-6. And then James Madison and Southern Miss will play after that. They have these games for 3.5 hours. We'll see. There was rain in Birmingham today, but not apparently affecting Montgomery. So that's good to see. Coastal Carolina, we'll get to that here in a second. And, of course, the Cajuns are playing Texas State at the allegedly at 7:30 at night. We shall see. We'll have to stay up late for that. All right, so we'll come back. We'll talk about the Georgia State, Georgia Southern ball game, and we'll start to look ahead to Washington and the Ragin Cajuns. Ragin Cajuns softball not heading up to Washington until Thursday late morning, and then, get a good practice in later that night, that evening, getting used to the time zone and the probably lack of humidity in Washington State. In downtown Seattle. So we did learn some things on my radio show today, 103.3 The GOAT. You can go kayaking in the middle of the city. I did not know that. At all. All right, let's tell you a little bit about FanDuel. Let's take a timeout. Let's talk about FanDuel right now. And it looks like we're going to have another game in the Eastern Conference Finals. I can spit it out. It appears that let's see if we get it here, that the Celtics have avoided elimination, get a hot third quarter, and they're going to force a game 5, which is, of course, back in Boston. So you have another chance for that, and we'll see how long that goes on before the winner of that plays Denver. But you make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, because right now new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. There's no better place to bet all of the playoff action than America's #1 sports book. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Dave Schultz, back with more Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. We told you about the earlier ball game today, James Madison slipping past ODU, and now you have Georgia State beating Georgia Southern again. This one 8-5 final. Georgia State jumped out to a big lead. Georgia Southern came back. Georgia State, as they say, got some insurance, and they go on to beat the Golden Eagles, the Georgia Southern Eagles, 8-5. Now, if you go, back, can we look at there? So let me see if we can find Georgia State baseball's schedule, because they, turned their season around when they swept Georgia Southern. How long ago was that? Let's see here. So that's only a couple weeks ago, right? They had lost 5 straight games. Not that these teams are bad, but I'm just saying, they'd come off a winning streak, by the way. So, talk about another roller coaster season, right? They lost 9-7 in a midweek game at Georgia State. They take all 3 from Marshall, so they sweep Marshall, but then here comes the losing. They lose at Vanderbilt. Okay, nothing to be ashamed about there. They do get swept by Texas State in San Marcos, and then they lose to Wofford. So they've won 5 in a row. They lose 5 in a row, and then, they're outside of the playoffs looking in, I think, as well, and then they sweep Georgia Southern. Oh, and these games were not close. And Georgia Southern is supposed to be the good baseball team, not necessarily Georgia State, at least traditionally. 11-3, 8-2, 16-5. Those games are not close. Then they take 2 out of 3 from Old Dominion before losing 7-6 to finish up the regular season. So all of a sudden, Georgia State has now won 6 of 7 ball games, and they have a tall task ahead of them. They're going to take on Coastal Carolina. And so, not sure if we saw who was going to pitch for Coastal Carolina. A lot of teams, especially when you're playing a 7 seed or an 8 seed, although these two teams are rather hot for their two positions, do you save your ace pitcher for a later round, right? Because now you're in double elimination. So no matter what, the aces for Coastal Carolina and Tanner Hall for Southern Miss are going to pitch. But maybe you can get away with your number 2 guy or your number 3 guy against what is maybe their number 1 guy. I don't know if those guys, it's tough to pitch a number 1 guy on a Tuesday if that number 1 guy pitched on a Thursday. Not easy to do the previous week. That's really no rest, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I mean, it's 4 days rest. So that's tough to do. Georgia State will take on Coastal Carolina, the number 1 seed in the tournament. And again, I for one will be shocked if it's not Coastal Carolina against Southern Miss in the championship. That's the way I see it. We even had Matt Deggs on, and the Cajuns could get 2 really good outings with Nezu and Fluno to pitch. Was that Jackson Nezu, and Carson Fluno? And then it kind of feels like we're going to wing it. I think that's what Matt Deggs says. We'll just figure out what to do come Friday. David Christie has pitched pretty good, like against LSU. He pitched a whale of a ball game. Pitched, I think, a whale of a ball game against Coastal Carolina, but has not pitched extremely well the last couple of outings. So even Matt Deggs is like, hang tight. We'll see where it goes if they get that far. So I'm just not sure the Cajuns have enough pitching. They certainly have enough hitting. All right. If the Cajuns bats can, manage enough runs, and it's going to be tough. It's different, right? If you're facing Tanner Hall and Southern Miss, you got to get some runs, and the pitching has to step up. If you're facing Coastal Carolina, you got to keep up with the bats. It's 2 kind of different outlooks as you're going. And Texas State is another one of those teams. You got to come in with good pitching. The Cajuns just swept Texas State a couple series ago. Didn't see that one coming at all. On my radio shows, like, you got to sweep ULM, 2 out of 3 from Texas State, and take 1 from Southern Miss, and you should be in good shape. Well, they did one better. Instead of going 6-3, they went 7-2, and they end up with the 4 seed. I guess one more win, they could have had the 3 seed, and then you start first thing in the morning. And as I've heard other people suggest, the best part about playing in the first game is that when you're playing. You can get up and plan the day, even though it may be extremely early. Whereas everybody else has to wait if there's weather, if there's extra innings, whatever the case may be. Baseball seems to go a little bit quicker these days because there's a pitch count that it used to, and then softball. Softball does not have a pitch count. So, all right, so tomorrow's, I guess, it's just I'd say it's the quarterfinals, but I'm not sure if that's exactly the case. First round of double elimination at 9. Troy is playing App State, followed by number 2 Southern Miss and James Madison. We get the number 1 seeded Coastal Carolina at 4, and the Cajuns and Texas State go at it 7:30 on Wednesday. All right, but all these teams are now in the double elimination part. So a loss, they still can keep on playing. It makes it really difficult if you lose tomorrow to make hay in the tournament. All right, let's take another timeout. We'll talk a little, mostly Washington Huskies softball, because we don't really know a whole lot about them. We found out a couple of things in the last few days. And so we'll take a timeout, come back, and we will talk Washington Huskies. But first, I did want to thank you for continuing to support. We are Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. We are continuing to grow. Did we see 240? I may not have quite gotten to 240 subscribers. We're getting there. And so that's nice to be. Oh, we did. How about that? 114 subscribers. So that's great. We do appreciate it. We'll see if we can get, I don't know if anyone wants to spread the word. Maybe we can get to 250 by the end of the baseball season. And that's basically the end of this year's sporting. I was going to say the end of the Sunbelt tournament, because we still have at least 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 Sun Belt teams in Sun Belt play. So we shall see how that plays out. But again, thank you so much. It's a big help. Like and share the videos. If there is a comment, I will respond. All right. I will, again, try to be direct and not necessarily sarcastic, because that doesn't come off as well when you're just writing and you can't understand tone and everything like that. So I try to be direct and straightforward to answer your questions. So also I'm up to getting help. It's tough to know what is going on exactly with all the teams. A lot of, Southern Miss has this special group of fans, and they're really helpful in passing along some information. So that's great as well. Also, Marshall did that as well for a football podcast. So that was good as well. So also, don't forget, audio podcasts are available as well. I know we push YouTube, and it's a big part of our show, but you can get it anywhere you get your podcasts from. Amazon, iHeart, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, just search Locked On Sunbelt and you'll be able to find it. All right. Let's get back to it. I want to make sure I'm all set here. I am your host, Dave Schultz. It is Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Washington Huskies. All right. So they are coached by Heather Tarr, but their best player, this name may sound familiar to people that may be my age, Bailey Klingler. She is not Klinger like MASH, but Klingler, as in David Klingler, as in Houston Cougars setting all kinds of passing records, David Klingler. Cincinnati Bengals, David Klingler. So she's got a little family heritage going there, just like Alexa Langoliers for the Ragin Cajuns has Shea as a brother in the big leagues. Bailey's uncle David was a big-time college football player. And so she is their best hitter average-wise. Yeah, 391. I checked that. Best hitter, period. 391, 12 home runs, 47 RBI. Madison Husky, 11 home runs, 42 runs batted in. So that's kind of like the 1-2 punch Pleasance for LSU and Georgia Clark. Georgia Clark did hit a home run, almost hit another home run. Pleasance had a big series, but you kind of want to work around them. At one point in time, though, LSU, it was the bottom of the order doing all the damage against the Cajuns. So we'll see about that. They do have a very cool name, a Native American. Silent Rain Espinoza is playing. She's from California, and I just think that's a great name. She's been playing a long time. Her parents are Graybuck and Mackenzie, and her brothers are Grayson and Bucky. So very cool. Silent Rain. What did I say? Espinoza? Did I get that right? I did get that right. Silent Rain Espinoza. All right. Pitching wise, they do not have a whole lot of pitching comparably so. All right. Ruby Malin is the head honcho. All right. And she's pretty good. But she's got more innings pitched than the next 2 pitchers combined. So this is going to be a lot like, Sydney Nestor from Marshall? I'm going to figure that Ruby Malin is going to pitch most of the softball this weekend. And if it gets to 3 ball games, the Cajuns are going to have the advantage. You'd like to see Megan Shorman kind of get it back together, but Carly Heath has pitched well. Kendra Lamb has pitched well. The freshman's pitched well. Sam Landry's pitched extremely well. You need Megan in there a little bit. But if it's up to Ruby, it could be, that's a lot of pressure on one pitcher. I'm sure, somewhere along the way, if necessary, they'll get somebody else in there for a little bit. Maybe someone takes it on the chin if a game gets out of hand, I don't know, on Friday or Saturday, and then you worry about the next game, the next day. Malin's got some good stats here. 189 strikeouts, 163rd innings pitched. She has given up a lot of home runs. Again, I don't know if that's being because it's in the Pac-12 type of deal. Opponents hitting 218 against her. She gives up 2.2 runs a game, 2.27 ERA. The other girls, Kelly Lynch, 2.43 ERA, and Lindsay Lopez, 3.75. Again, they've only got 158 innings exactly combined. So, again, this is going to be Ruby Malin against Sam Landry, Kendra Lamb, Mega Shorman, Carly Heath. And the Cajuns can do one better based on what happened right on Sunday. They have five pitchers that can, and I apologize for this. They have 5 pitchers who can take the circle, and that Jerry Glasgow has confidence in, right? I mean, these by numbers. Let's see here. Yeah, Chloe Riazada. That's 5 pitchers. You don't see that in softball very often. You just don't. Sam ran out of gas a little bit. She pitched on Friday and then pitched an amazing, 5 shutout innings on Sunday and just ran out of gas for game 2. And Chloe came, the freshman out of Friendswood, Texas, and if you get Megan going and Sam's feeling good and Kendrick can come out of the bullpen, and if you get a chance, I'm not sure how many other people besides Cajun fans are going to be watching and Husky fans watching. But if you get a chance, Kendra Lamb has to be one of the coolest cats going. You can't tell if she's up 5-0 or down 5-0. She picks up her little rosin bag after she strikes out the winner, after she strikes out the last batter for the Sun Belt, and her teammates jump on her. So, you can't tell her if she's in trouble. You can't tell if she's, striking people out, 3 batters on 12 pitches. It really is neat to see, in this case, a young woman, but just a young player. She's obviously got a lot of experience playing softball for the Cajuns, but a lot of times you don't see that in the big leagues. You see these guys wide-eyed. They've been playing pro ball for 4 or 5 years in the minor leagues. They get to the big leagues and boom, they can't handle it. And so Kendra Lamb seems to be able to handle the pressure situations, as she's been very key for the Cajuns down the stretch. All right, today is Wednesday's episode, so we only have, a couple of more episodes to go. We'll see if we can find out more information. Maybe we get somebody from Washington to tell us about it. So, when you're dealing with a, major league city athletic department, and you can't get any more major league than Seattle. Washington is in the middle of it. It's in downtown Washington. Sometimes the softball team is going to be overlooked compared to a baseball team or a basketball team, and certainly a football team. So, you can only cover so much. Smaller communities, such as here in Lafayette, right, thrive on covering, a really good softball team. So maybe we'll find out if we can get somebody to come on the show to talk about Washington softball. We will, because we want to hear more about it. All right. Want to thank you for tuning in to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt. Somehow this 18-minute episode is now approaching 25. So I apologize. We'll be back again. We'll be back again tomorrow with another edition of Locked On Sunbelt. I am your host, Dave Schultz. Thanks so much for tuning in. Once again, it's Locked On Sunbelt, your team.